Good morning, Steve. And we're ready to go this morning. We're over two or more, and they're on two. So that's good. We may get joined by some others as we go. Today we're looking at First Samuel chapter 14, which is one of my passages I really enjoy, just because of the story of what happens, and yeah. So shall I read, Steve, and you pray? Would that be a good idea?
Yeah, that's fine because yeah,
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, thank you for today, and we just thank you for your presence, and yeah, just pray for your insight and your peace and your goodness and your love to be with us as we go. In Jesus' name, Amen.
Amen. Right. So the situation we come into this with is Saul. Jonathan has attacked a Philistine garrison, and as a result of that, there is problems for the Israelites. The whole Philistine army has come up against them, and they're kind of in this. Saul has 600 men, and he's hidden away, and people are running for the hills and running out the country and all sorts of things. And this is the situation that's going on. So that just sets the scene as we come to this passage. So 1 Samuel 14, we begin at verse 1. And one day Jonathan, the son of Saul, said to the young man who carried his armor, "Come, let us go over to the Philistine garrison on the other side." But he didn't tell his father. Saul was staying in the outskirts of Gibeah in the pomegranate cave at Migron. The people who were with him were about 600 men, including Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of the Lord in Shiloh, wearing an ephod. And the people did not know that Jonathan had gone. Within the passes by which Jonathan sought to go over to the Philistine garrison, there was a rocky crag on one side and a rocky crag on the other. The name of one was Bozez's, and the other was Shenah. And the other crag rose to the north in front of Michmash, and the other to the south in front of Geba. Jonathan said to the young man who carried his armor, "Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, by many or by few." The armor-bearer said to him, "Do all that is in your heart. Do as you wish. Behold, I am with you heart and soul." Jonathan said, "Behold, we will cross over to the men, and we will show ourselves to them. If they say to us, 'Wait until we come down to you,' then we will stand in our place and will not go up to them. But if they say to us, 'Come up to us,' then we will go up, for the Lord has given them into our hand, and this shall be a sign to us." So both of them showed themselves to the garrison of the Philistines. And the Philistines said, "Look, Hebrews are coming out of the holes where they've hidden themselves." And the men of the garrison hailed Jonathan and his armor-bearer and said, "Come up to us, and we'll show you a thing." And Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Come after me, for the Lord has given them into the hands of Israel." Then Jonathan climbed up on his hands and feet, and the armor-bearer after him. And they fell before Jonathan, and his armor-bearer killed them after him. And the first strike which Jonathan and his armor-bearer made killed 20 men within half a furrow's length of an acre of land. And there was panic in the camp, in the field, among the people. The garrison and even the raiders trembled. The earth quaked and became a great panic. And the watchmen of Saul in Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and behold, the multitude was dispersing here and there. Then Saul said to the people who were with him, "Count and see who's gone from us." When they counted, behold, Jonathan and his armor-bearer were not there. So Saul said to Ahijah, "Bring the ark of the Lord here," for the ark went at that time with the people of Israel. Now when Saul was talking to the priest, the tumult in the camp of the Philistines increased more and more. So Saul said to the priest, "Withdraw your hand." Then Saul and all the people who were with him rallied and went into battle, and behold, every Philistine's sword was against his fellow, and there was great confusion. Now the Hebrews who'd been with the Philistines before that time, who'd gone up with them into the camp, even they also turned to be with the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. Likewise all the men of Israel who had hidden themselves in the hill country of Ephraim heard the Philistines were fleeing. They too followed hard after them in battle. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle passed beyond Beth-aven. Wow. So, fantastic story of a great battle and victory. Now, just to set the scene a little bit, and give you time to process some thoughts there, Steve. We've got Saul has been going into... Jonathan has caused the problem in the first place by attacking the Philistines. They'd beaten the Ammonites, and that battle had taken place. And it was the Lord rushed on Saul, and then from there he went into battle. Then Jonathan attacked a Philistine group, and as a result all the Philistines came out against them, and so the Israelites were hiding. They're in fear. Saul had decided, right, we're losing people here. Actually, we're waiting for Samuel to come so we can do a sacrifice. We waited 7 days. He's going to be late. And Saul dashed in and did it himself. And we spent time yesterday discussing that. You can look that up on our YouTube channel and see how our discussions on that went, which I thought was brilliant. We looked in depth into that. And actually the understanding of Saul and what he'd done. Saul knew what he'd done. He said he had to force himself to do it. But in doing so made a choice. And as a result, Samuel said, "This kingdom won't be yours forever. It could have been, but it won't be." And actually that's the kind of defeat. And so you've got Saul hiding in this cave afterwards, still with the pending battle with the Philistines, and Jonathan, his son, just sort of thinks, yeah, I think we'll go off and have another little attempt at the Philistines. and he only takes one person with him, and basically the two of them put the whole Philistine army to flight. And I do question Jonathan's logic here. He seems to be a hot-headed young man who is full of confidence, but he also has a connection with God, and he does test this out a little bit. But the way he tests it out is militarily just hilarious in some ways. If you're going to fight a battle and you want your enemy running up a hill, so that he's got to make effort to climb the hill so that you can just put all your effort into smacking him down. So in battle terms, the advantage is the high ground and not climbing up to the high ground. So what Jonathan's saying is, if the Philistines say, "Hey, we'll give up our advantage of high ground and come down to you," then we know God's not in it. But if the Philistines say what they obviously more likely to say is, "Come up to us," while you're climbing, we'll give you a smacking. Do you know what I mean? So come up to us. Actually, that kind of approach is really the most obvious approach. But Jonathan's assumption is, if that's the approach, then God's given them to us. And his famous statement, "What can stop the Lord from saving, whether by few or by many?" And I love that statement. That's full of faith. And that statement has strengthened me many, many times as I've gone through things. But anyway, I'll throw it open. Two things about the rocky crags that they face. One is called Bozezas, and that says, means the gleaming one, and Shena means the thorny one. So he's going the thorny one and the gold, the kind of gleaming one. In between the two of those, that's where he goes. So I'll throw it open to Steve. Anything you'd like to chip in, Steve?
Yeah, I suppose the main question, lingering today, because we talked a bit about the sins of presumption and how I don't know how applicable that was. It was, I suppose you could say that Saul presumed, but it wasn't presumption. He felt forced. His hand was forced to do the sacrifice. I think it's something a lot of this up. Jonathan, I was already writing it. He was a man of no fear of man or men. I was just putting the similarity between Jonathan and David. As a young man, David was acted in a very similar fashion with the Philistines. He had no fear. He loved the Lord. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to know exactly. We've only got a few chapters really to really he appears in 1 Samuel 13, and then there's a bit about in 14. There's a good bit about Jonathan, obviously, and now it'd be with hindsight to look at those things, but that's it really. I should actually go to this chapter now, and I would say I normally I'm just interested in what was see in the Old Testament. The spiritual side is normally we see it in the physical. Mm-hmm. So see demons aren't really mentioned in the Old Testament, but they're mentioned as in the false gods. Mm-hmm. And part of the problem is also that they were described just recently as that they're man-made. So that part is not does not equate equally straightforwardly to demons. We understand fallen angels. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this what I'm saying is we're not told what's happening in the spiritual side. When you get to the New Testament, it's very clear. Mm-hmm. Jesus' ministry, once he gets into it, is to go around preaching the kingdom of heaven's at hand, healing the sick, raising the dead, cleansing the leper, and casting out demons. And you don't really see that. Well, it's particular to the ministry of Jesus when grace arrives. Okay, and as far as I see it, it's to cast out these spirits. So we're not seeing that here. We don't see Jonathan and his armor bearer go up there, and they saw the scene. They saw the angels, and that happens sometimes in the Old Testament. But they didn't say, they didn't go up to enemies and say we cast out the spirit of war and the spirit of aggression and all these things. No, they just thrust them through. And that we must remember. That's the Old Testament. We're not called to thrust people through. Yeah. We're called to battle. Yeah, it's.
So what? So we've got physical battles, whereas in the New Testament we're told we war not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers in the heavenly realms. So our battle as Christians is not a physical one. Our battle is spiritual. It affects us spiritual, physical, all those things all together. I think in this case there is a battle strategy here, and there's some key bits of this. Jonathan knocks people down and his armor bearer finishes him off. And actually he checks first, is God in this? Which his father Saul doesn't. Right? When he's going into battle, he's full of presumption and pressures. Jonathan has none of those pressures. Jonathan is the pressure. he goes storming in and going for it. But there's this assumption, in him. Right, if Lord's in it, right, we'll go for it. And he's got his armor bearer with him, and the armor bearer is willing to lay down his life for these plans of Jonathan. It's a fantastic example of leadership. It's a fantastic example of following as well. And it's not about just, it was a combo of the two working together that brought the destruction to the Philistines. Jonathan knocking him down, the armor bearer finishing him off. But the faith behind it was, what can stop the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few? In other words, the battle spiritually belongs to the Lord. And actually that then affects the physical. The spiritual then affects the physical. So in some ways, if the battle belongs to the Lord, there will be victory in the physical. That's Jonathan, seems to be Jonathan's logic. And actually, when you look at it, it's saying the Philistines came to attack, when we looked at this yesterday, with numbers that felt like the sand on the seashore. And two people put them all to flight. So the statement, what can stop the Lord from saving, whether by few or by many? Two Israelites took down an army as vast as the sand on the seashore by tackling one garrison. And in the space of part of an acre, 20 men went down. And Jonathan knocked them down, and the armor bearer finished them off. And actually, that fear that gripped the Philistines went right through the camp. And this is what we find is in battle terms, fear is a massive destructive force. And here we see fear of the Israelites actually causing this victory, but actually behind the victory is God. What can stop the Lord from saving by few or by many? That's the spiritual argument. And actually, time and time again in the life of David, you find they're swamped by enemies, they overcome. And this kind of concept, what can stop the Lord from saving, whether by few or by many, is the same attitude David takes into taking on Goliath. There's another situation, they sit to lose. And I think sometimes when we look at the practical things around us, we can think, oh well, that's going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and the other is going to happen, because look at the numbers of here, look at what's happening here, and oh well, that's a fait accompli, that's what's going to happen. We can do that. Or sometimes where God rises on us, we go, what can stop the Lord from saving, whether by few or by many? And we go into situations far bigger than us, far undetermined what's going to happen, and see God turn it round for a victory. I'm not saying a stupidity. You've got something in Jonathan here that's saying, let's see what they say, and if this is the case, God's with us, and if the other is the case, we wait till they come down. And it doesn't say they'd fight them, it says they might leg it. You just don't know what they'll do. Yeah. So actually, there is a checking with God there, but the assumption is it's positive. The whole assumption is we can take them on, and you think, that is an incredible level of faith and courage, and leadership. I mean, wow. So where Saul's leadership doesn't seem to be, top notch, he's making mistakes at the very top. His son is actually showing a level of leadership that he should have. And the other thing that we're seeing here is the son is, so the son is unlikely to be king eventually, because the kingdom's been taken away from Saul and there's another one in place. So if there's another one in place, that person is likely to be alive at this moment. And if that person is alive at this moment, it's unlikely that Jonathan would be king for long if he was. Over to you, Steve.
Just looking at 6. Some good clues here. Jonathan said to the young man who carried his armor, "Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised." He definitely sounds like David, although there's the thing with that they it's slightly different, but it may be that the Lord will work for us. So he's like, well, let's give it a go. For nothing hidden by us, so revealed by many. But see his armor bearer, he's a good guy. Do all that is in your heart. Do as you wish. Behold, I am with you, heart and soul. I feel that's the. See, you might be saying, on a. I feel like that's the Spirit of God was in that statement.
Mm.
So I see the armor bearer as another God-fearing person. See, there's other places in the Old Testament where it's do whatever's in your heart. This kind of statement. It's and the Lord will bless it. It's not. Anyway. So you want to say something, Nigel?
Yeah, I was just going to say. Last night I was setting something up on YouTube, and there's this thing of Bear Grylls and this SAS guy. And I thought, it's only 15 minutes long. I'll have a listen. And it was about this SAS guy who was a security consultant on ships going through around the Horn of Africa, where there were pirates coming out and attacking ships and holding them for ransom. And he said, they said, what weapons did you have? He said, we didn't have any weapons. Well, our idea was to outrun them. That was the whole plan. And he said, in those days we didn't have weapons. Now ships have weapons going around the area. But what he said was, so it was just 2 of them as security consultants, and one of them was in no fit state to be a security consultant at that moment. So this guy was left with 2 pirate ships, little boats, coming after them. And so what he did is he covered the deck in oil so that it would be slippery for them. And he said, basically, my battle strategy was that they would shoot at us till they ran out of bullets. And then I could take them down with my fists. That was his plan, right? And actually what happened is he saw one of the ladders coming to hook on the boat. And he ran into the cabin and pulled out a tiny fridge and emptied all the bottles of Coke out of it, carried it over to the side and threw it down on the guys coming up the ladder. And it must have been such a shock for them that they turned round and he heard it thud into their boat and they went away. And he was laughing because he took them off with a fridge. And you say you've got stories like this, you watch like that, and there's one person with nothing throwing a fridge, and it frightens people off. I don't think that's a parallel thing to this, but that kind of sense of courage and determination is something that is in a lot of situations is needed, but this isn't human courage. This is courage in God and what he can do through them. And I think this is really important for us, that actually we put our trust in God. We take on things bigger than us. We take on situations bigger than us. We trust him. We listen to him. We check where he is on this. And that's what Jonathan did. And it's in a marked contrast to Saul. And what we're about to see probably on Monday is Saul tries to turn this battle round to his advantage. Oh, it's Jonathan, it's my son, it's my boy. Right, I will claim this victory. And when he tries to do that, he causes massive problems again. He just can't seem to get it right. But the reason he's not getting it right is he's not going to God each time. There's an impatience in Saul's relationship with God. There's an impatience and an assumption that God won't speak to him, or there's something there that's just a barrier between him and God. We don't know what it is, but in us, if we've got that kind of impatience when it comes to things of God, then actually we need to look at that. We need to look at our connection with God. And I think for us as Christians, that connection with God is paramount. And actually we can go through the motions of many things, but that connection with God is the main thing. And we need to maintain that. We need to keep that in all we do. And I think that's really important. Steve?
Yeah, I'll propose what it was in general terms. It was a fear. See, perfect love casts out all fear.
Yeah.
And there's interesting, the language that the New Testament used, cast out. See, it could be, it's got to be, it's going back to where I started this thing. There's one good fear, and it's fear of a spirit. And his name is God. Mm-hmm. He is the Almighty Spirit. Yeah. And there's no need to fear love. Anyway, so he had a fear of the enemy, of his own men. There's all kind of fears can get in. So it's got to be a fear. If he only feared the Lord, Saul wouldn't have been in this problem. Mm-hmm. It can be. I'm looking into these fears. It could be a fear of time. Oh, can't you see? Time's getting out of hand. Look at the problem. He was pressed because of time. But the Lord's created time. But we see it in the Old Testament. Yeah. We see it many times where he said, "Well, don't worry, we'll change move the planets round, give you a bit more time. Yeah. We'll give you another 30 years for your life." All this kind of thing, or whatever,
And I think one of the things we do very often is forget God, who He is in situations where there's pressure. And this is where I feel for Saul a little bit, because yesterday we're looking at Saul and actually he did the sacrifice and all of that under pressure because people were leaving. Now, how could he have acted differently is part of the question. And what he could have done was he could have gone, "Hey guys, listen, we want God with us. That is the main thing. And actually we need to wait for Samuel. Come on, don't leave, stay. We'll turn this into victory. Let's wait for Samuel. We need to hear from the Lord. That's paramount." A good leader would have done that. But this leader's leading in their own strength, with their own nous and their own thing, and no connection with that. In a contrast, Jonathan here is going, actually, let's go and take on the Philistines, right? Let's go and do it. And then he goes, well, right, we'll attack them there. And strategically, what may have happened is this may have been the weakest point in the Philistine army, where they were relying on the geography to protect them. And so they only had 20 men or so up there. because they thought, oh well, this will be nice and safe. I look at the geography, right? We need to put our forces elsewhere where we're more vulnerable, and so on. So actually, this point was probably a very strategic point in the battle. But Jonathan was far more like, oh yeah, we'll take those guys on then. Let's do that. Now, if the Lord's with us, this is what will happen. If he's not, they'll come down to us. So he's thinking, right, okay, this is what we do. There's a consultation with God. There's a connection with God. And then a massive victory. But that great faith statement, what can stop the Lord from saving, whether by few or by many, is a very powerful statement. And actually, if you think about it in life, it is very often the few that make the difference, not the many. And the few actually motivate the many. And you find that in all kinds of areas of society. It's very often the few that whose initiative actually people go, oh yeah, I like that, and they get behind it. And that following that initiative is always done by the few. And sometimes the few have thought about its connection with the many, but actually it's very often, it's rarely in the weight of numbers that things just happen. It's very often because of the few that everything else happens. And so what can stop the Lord from saving by few or by many? If you're feeling pressed today and hard done by and all those things, actually know that it's by the few that things happen. Actually ask God for initiative and use it. And I think that's really a powerful way forward. Steve, your hand's popped up again.
Yeah. Looking at verse 6, it's interesting. Young circumcised. I'm just going to point out this point. It may be that the Lord will work for us. I like. I'm quite gun-ho. I mean, I'm not suggesting, disclaimer alert, unless you've got, it's not even, probably the Lord will work for us. It wasn't that. He said maybe that what Lord, he had an escape plan. Sure, everyone who knows, military, you got to have, of course, if you go into battle, you've got to have a plan to retreat. They don't normally say, yeah, we go in there, and if we'll just die on the battlefield. If we get overrun, the millions of them come, and we're getting done in, we need to think how to get back across the river and all this stuff. I'm talking not about this thing, but anyway. So I put here, yeah, let's give it a go, because it's the uncircumcision of these people that causes him, like it did with David. I'm just going to jump about a bit here because 9 and 10. This was what do I think here? We've shown it. This thing struck me like another great warrior, Gideon. He would put the fleece out, and they say, "Well, let's see what." And this is what Jonathan does. Well, we'll ask them whether they should say, "Come up here," or we'll wait and see if they come down to us. So that is a yes, no. How do you want us to approach this, Lord? And so that's you should inquire of the Lord, and that really is his inquiry. It's like, if they say this,
And what's interesting here at the end is the victory that Jonathan does causes a disarray in the Philistines, and it's Saul's observers going, "Oh, look, there's disarray in the Philistines. What's going on?" Saul goes, "Has someone left our camp?" Jonathan's gone, typical. And then he goes, "Right, quick, let's go." He's good at spotting an opportunity and diving in on it. He'd be a great politician. He'd be great on TV, I think, Saul. You know, you'd say, oh, well, is this well, this is, of course, because my government has organised this. You know, he's very, very good. He's got all the marks of good leadership, but he also dives in on other people's success very, very quickly. But actually, that kind of sense of going for it, that momentum is produced, and it's the weight of numbers that provide the victory in the end, because they all join the battle, and they're even coming out the hills and coming out the woods and coming out of everywhere to join the battle, to bring the victory. And I think that's often what happens, but it's very often the initiative of the few that helps that happen. And I would suggest, you know, that when you get to the tipping point, as it says, when you get past the tipping point, suddenly you've got the whole momentum going. Well, the tipping point was passed just with 2 people, and then the rest of it followed. Steve?
Yeah, looking at 15, so it's all this thing of the physical battle, but I'm more interested, I'm interested in all that stuff, but 15, and there was panic in the camp. Now, obviously, if the people, what's this, the uncircumcised people, if people are dying in front of you, there could be some panic, could set in. See, it's a mental, it's a spiritual state. See, I'll show you really where it goes. In the field, amongst all the people, the garrison and even the raiders trembled. The earth quaked. Well, what's going on? And it became a very great panic. See, whether you say, well, of course they were panicking because people were dying, that makes no sense. You go, oh, you got 2 people there. Maybe you can read anyway. See, the thing is, the earth quaked.
Yeah.
See whether that is an earthquake. Sorry.
Yeah,
no man can create an earthquake. Well, they didn't have a nuclear bomb then, so or bombs. So, and you see this actually going further. Well, in 19. Sorry, I'm just not tracking very well. In 20, then Saul and all the people who were with him rallied and went into the battle. And behold, every Philistine's sword was against his fellow. So, and there was a great confusion. See, that's not. I propose it ramped up to great. There was confusion, panic, and now there's great confusion.
Yeah. And
there was an earthquake. That could be. Oh yes, that could be the writer's poetic license. No, I believe there was the ground was in the spirit, and in the physical, the ground quaked.
And
you get the point I'm making.
Yeah, absolutely. God backed it up. What can stop the Lord from saving, whether by few or by many? And actually also with that is he backs it up with an earthquake and backs it up with, but it says a great terror from God came on them is another translation of that. And I think that there is something happening there. God is on the move, and that's what shifts things. The terror isn't just of Jonathan and his own, it's an unnatural terror, it's a supernatural terror. It's something that has got in there and then backed up by an earthquake. Oh man, they are in real terror, and actually that we see time and time again in battles that there's a terror brought on people. In some cases they even fought each other, and in this case they were fighting each other. The Israelites didn't have swords. It's saying the Philistines with their swords were slicing and dicing each other. Do you know what I mean? There was a terror, an unnatural terror just came upon them. And I think, this great victory, there's an initiative there. What can stop the Lord from saving? It's almost like a, come on, God, into the situation. And I think that's really powerful. So there's a lot we can pick up from this. I think there's a lot on teamwork, on people working together. As you said, that's a spiritual statement. I'm with you, heart and soul. Actually, is a very powerful statement in that, and actually, that unity is in there. There's a whole load of dynamics, and this is why this is such a good teaching passage for leadership and so on. But I think it's more on the tactical side than the strategic side. The strategic side is, does it fit with God's strategy? And it does. And so God's with it. God's working in it. And this tactical battle actually is won, and this huge victory's turned over. But this is a battle. There is still a war going on against the Philistines that will rumble on for some time. But in this case, things are turned over by Jonathan and his armor bearer, and their unity and their faith in God actually puts a whole army as big as the sand on the seashore to flight. And I think that's powerful. I think we may leave it there, Steve, unless you've got something else to chip in.
Well, probably my last point then is you find this in the New Testament. There are those who have weak faith and those who have strong faith.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty clear that Saul's son, that's Jonathan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Has strong faith and his armor bearer. Saul is one, even without a battle, just to what he was called, which was to be king, was hiding among the baggage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's not. You might say, well, people would tear him apart. No, they called for a king. It was fear of the position, and by me, I'm the man. There's going to be king. And anyway, we should see here too that yes, likewise in verse 22, likewise when all the men of Israel who have hidden themselves in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines were fleeing, they too followed hard after them into the battle. It's like, oh great, we're winning, let's get out of this hole. It's many stories of people that have done well in the battle, then they go into the cave and hide themselves, and then they come out and they join the battle, the next round of battle. So that's probably about it, really.
Mm-hmm.
We should take 23. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle passed to Beth Aven. It'd be interesting to know what somebody who's good at Hebrew would tell us what Beth Aven is, because that will probably tell us something as well. Yeah. Or maybe not. Maybe.
I'm just trying to think what Beth means. But yeah, because you got Bethlehem, you got. Just trying to think. I'm trying to remember.
It's Number 14, verse 22.
Meaning in Hebrew, it means house of nothingness. Beth means house. That's right. House of nothingness. House of idols. That's something else there. And looking up Jonathan means God has given. And he's given Saul a great son. Right. We'll leave it there. I think we continue from Beth Aven on Monday. But have a good weekend, Steve, and I'll move us offline here.
Thank you, Nigel.